Okay. All right, we are going to switch today to radians. Okay, you knew it was coming. So remember me talking to you about how the whole world uses the metric system, but in America we still use inches and feet. But the scientific world, even in America, uses the metric system. Well, degrees and radians are a lot like that. The average person uses degrees when they're talking about an angle. More technology-wise, you end up using radians. Okay, so radians is another angle at which you need.
I thought I brought my calculator, but I don't.
I might have picked up your calculator.
I think you might
I
have.
did, maybe. Okay. It is on a coordinate plane. Okay, and this is the easiest way to compare. All right, so we know that a quarter of the way around is 90 degrees. We know that halfway around is 180 degrees. We know that 3/4 of the way down is 270 degrees. And then all the way back around is 360. So the concept that if you turn a complete circle, you've turned 360 degrees. Well, when we compare it to radians, radians typically are in terms of pi. Okay, so you have pi radians or a quarter of a pi radian. So basically 180 degrees is the same thing as pi radians. Now, do not get mixed up on thinking, oh, that's just an unknown. No, what is pi?
3.1.
3.14. So literally this is 3.14 radians, but the easiest way to do it is to call it pi radians. If this is pi radians, what is all the way around a circle? How many pi radians? 2 pi radians. So 360 degrees is the same as 2 pi radians. Okay? Does that make sense? What would 90 degrees be?
Half pi.
Half a pi. Okay? You can just, the abbreviation is RAD for radians. Okay, not that it saves you much work, if you will. We are going to take this concept. Now, obviously here is going to be something different. This is basically going to, well, I'm going to show you that in a minute, okay? So you understand, I can always say that 180 degrees is pi radians. All right, so we're going to have to be able to convert from one thing to another. I think I'm going to erase this and then we're going to come back to it, okay? Because there's some stuff you're going to have to memorize here on this coordinate plane, and obviously erasing the board is not going to be an easy concept today. Let's say I have 45 degrees, and I want to change that to radians. Again, I'm going to do dimensional analysis, okay? I want degrees to go away, and I want radians to stay. So the degrees have to go on the bottom, the radians have to go on the top. Now, we just looked on our coordinate plane. 180 degrees is the same as what?
1 pi.
Pi radians. Okay, so that is the way that I always switch it. Now, you do not have to do it that way. You could do 360 degrees is equal to 2 pi radians. But my unit of change is always the pi in the 180, okay? Now, if you take your calculator, now you're going to leave these in terms of pi. So pi is going to stand at the end. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your 45, divide it by your 180. It's going to give you a decimal value. If you go back and convert it, you know that it's equal to 1/4, right? So it's 1 times pi. So what I have is pi/4 radians. That's 45 degrees. Same thing, okay? So if I gave you, 190 degrees to figure out how many radians it would be. Again, I've got 180 degrees on the bottom. I'm going to take the 190, I'm going to divide it by 180, I'm going to get a decimal value, I'm going to convert it back, and it converts to 19 pi over 18 radians. Okay? You see the conversion between the two? You got to be able to go both ways. You got to be able to go from degrees to radians and radians to degrees. So let's say I have 2 pi over 3 radians. Okay, and I want to change that back to degrees. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put my line across here. Okay, I want to get rid of radians, so it's going to have to go on the bottom, versus degrees is going to go on the top, because I want degrees to finish. So I have pi radians is the same as 180 degrees on the top, right? Okay, the only thing that happened is I flipped it because of what I wanted to end up with. Now, that means I have a pi on the top and a pi on the bottom, which those both go away. So then I'm just going to go 2 times 180 divided by 3, and I'm going to know that this is equal to 120 degrees. Yes, no, maybe? Okay, I'm going to give you a couple to do, and then we're going to move on, okay? I want you to change 115 degrees to radians, and I want you to change negative 7 pi over 8 to degrees. Okay, and you can leave it with a negative in it. So what you got on both of them? Okay. All right. So some of the problems that we have, they will give it to you in degrees. Now what you're going to do in this particular chapter is you're going to be working with radians, problems that you're going to find areas of sectors, but everything is going to have to be changed to radians before you even start the problem. So just go ahead and accept that. Now this is what gets a little confusing, because on your calculator you have a radian setting, okay? If you'll remember right, I'll say, oh, is your calculator in degrees? Well, now we're going to switch back and forth between degrees and radians, so you have to remember on your calculator to change it, okay, when you need to. All right, now we're going to come back to our unit circle, if you will. And we are going to break down our unit circle. Now, if you remember right, a unit circle just means that the radius of the circle all the way around is going to be 1, okay? So, I'm going to go ahead and draw a unit circle on there. I might, after what y'all said about the markers, I might have to switch to a darker green marker, but then it might not come off my board. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to begin to memorize radians versus degrees. So we are going to go ahead and put some, we'll start with degrees and then we'll go back and do radians. We're going to do 2 different unit circles, one that's based on 30-degree angles and one that's based on 45-degree angles. Let's do the 30-degree angles first, okay? So basically, I'm going to draw, now remember drawing doesn't count. Okay, what I've done is I basically put 30-degree lines all the way around it. So this is 0, I'm going to start with degrees, this is going to be 30 degrees, this is going to be 60 degrees, 90 degrees, 120, 150, oops, as I put 15, 180, 210, 240, 270, 300, 330, and back to 360. Okay, so far so good, right? Okay, now I'm going to turn around and I'm going to put the radians on there. Now, if I am doing 30-degree angles, so this is my 30-degree unit circle, if you will, I'm going to do a base or a bottom of 6, okay? So, and that makes it easy. You can regurgitate this in a hurry if you draw it out. So this is going to be 1 pi over 6. This is 2 pi over 6, or pi over 3. This is going to be 3 pi over 6, or pi over 2, 4 pi over 6, or 2 pi over 3, 5 pi over 6, 6 pi over 6, or pi, okay, 7 pi over 6, 8 pi over 6, or 4 pi over 3, 9 pi over 6, or 3 pi over 2, 10 pi over 6, or 5 pi over 3, 11 pi over 6, and then all the way around is 12 pi over 6, or 2 pi. Okay?
I'm going to take a picture of it.
We're not quite done with everything that you have to know on it, so you might want to wait a minute.
Oh, wait till
Okay? Now, for each of the, do you understand how I derived it? Okay? Literally, if you can just remember, if it's a 30-degree unit circle, it's units of 6. So literally, you know, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, and they all go over 6. Now, some of them you have to reduce down, others you don't need to. For each one of these, you have to memorize the cosine and sine, okay, or the x and the y. Remember, the cosine is the x, the sine is the y. So going back up here in red, I am going to put the cosine and the sine, or the x and y, okay? So I'm going to come over here. Obviously, this one right here at 0 is 1, 0. Now remember, this is for a unit circle, okay? So, you know, that's has a radius of 1. So I've gone over 1 and up 0, so that's why it's 1, 0. Remember, this is your cosine, this is your sine, all the way through. Cosine is x, sine is y. Here, you have the square root of 3 over 2 and 1/2. So the cosine is the square root of 3 over 2. The sine is 1/2. Okay, you with me? This one switches. So the cosine is 1/2 and the sine is the square root of 3 over 2. This one, of course, is 0, 1. Okay, you with me so far? If you can memorize those two, you've got the whole thing. Okay, you can do your zeros, your 90s, 180s, and so forth, I'm pretty sure. So this is -1, 0, and this one down here, where I have no space, is 0, -1. Okay, you know those. Now, if I know these, I also know the ones over here, because this is positive, positive. This is negative, positive. That comes into place. Down here is negative, negative. And over here is positive, negative. Okay? Now, that means my 30-degree angle right here has the same values as that, except for my cosine is negative. So right here, I have a negative square root of 3 over 2 and a positive 1/2. What do I have here? Okay, because those are the same reference angles. Okay, that's 60. This is also a 60-degree reference angle. So it's the same as this, but my 1/2 is negative, because remember, my x or my cosine is going to be negative. Okay, now what do you think happens when I come down here? They're both negative. Okay, so this right here, the 210, is negative square root of 3 over 2 and negative 1/2. This one is negative 1/2 and negative square root of 3 over 2. Coming over here, this one, the cosine is positive and the sine's negative. So this is the square root of 3 over 2 and negative 1/2. And this down here is going to be a 1/2 and a negative square root of 3 over 2. Okay, you with me? Okay, so now, from now on, once you've got that memorized, or you might have to, and you're going to have to regurgitate this. Okay, in other words, I'm going to give you a unit circle and you're going to have to fill out everything. Okay, so you just might as well. So you might want to take a picture of that. It is in your book, but not all together in your book. And then I'm going to give you one to try to regurgitate after a few minutes here. Okay, but now this is our 30-degree one. This is how I remember it. Okay, obviously there's two things that you have to remember. The square root of 3 over 2 and 1/2. And after that, it's all about order. Okay, those are the only two things that you have to memorize. This is how I do it. This is a 30-degree angle. 30-degree has a 3 in it, right? So the 30-degree reference angles start with the square root of 3 over 2. Okay, the 3 in this and the 3 in this. That's how I remember it. The 60s are switched. So this one, this one, this one, and this one are all 30-degree reference angles, or pi over 6 reference angles. So therefore, those are the ones that are the square root of 3 over 2. All right, is that, oh, I gotta stop this. That was quick, 19 minutes.